am still currently trying to help sell them.
Okay. Your Honor, I believe that the drawing and the math worksheet is stipulated to, and that is people's proposed. Mr. He's going to tell me. 7. So I move for the admission of that.
No objection. Be admitted.
And that is the. Okay. Should I publish? Could I publish this on the screen, just so that we know there's 2 versions of that worksheet? So I want to make sure we're. Okay. Kira, the conversations that occurred afterwards you seemed compassionate for Jennifer at the beginning, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and why were you?
I wanted more information on what happened.
Okay. And you stated a couple times in the exhibit, the conversations, just be honest.
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
I wanted her to be honest about anything and everything. I'm a very truthful person, and I think that the truth is much better than a lie.
Okay. Did you suspect, what was the reason you suspected that she might not be honest? Was there something that you were concerned about?
Your Honor, I would object that this calls for speculation, and also the question is presuming facts that were not in evidence prior to the question.
I'm not exactly sure what the objection is, but I can move on. So at some point, did you stop communicating with her?
I tried to still talk to her, but the conversations got fewer and far between.
Okay. Did Jennifer ever mention taking Ethan to the doctor?
No.
Did she ever talk about him needing to get a physical, or that he was ill and needed treatment?
I don't recall.
Did James ever talk about that?
No.
Okay. And did you ever hear either one of them talk about getting their son therapy?
No.
Okay. One moment. Just real quick, Kira. I understand that your farm is further north. What's the cell coverage like there?
It is better than a lot of other farms, but there are still areas where you don't really get great cell service.
Okay, but you can receive and make calls.
Yes.
And how about text messages? Okay, and did the Crumbleys both have cell phones with them most of the time, do you know?
Yes.
Okay. Nothing further.
Yes. Thank you. Kira, what type of cell coverage do you have?
I have Verizon, which seems to be pretty good in that area.
Is it fair to say that you don't know what other cell phones, like companies, how good the access is?
I do not know.
Are there parts of the farm where people complain they can't get messages or talk on the phone?
Some areas some people get service, and then other areas some people don't. So it's inconsistent.
Sorry, I interrupted you. How big is the farm?
The farm is on 51 acres.
And in addition to the farm, there's a separate place where you do classes. Is that correct? Or what is Groveland?
Groveland was the barn that we had previously boarded at. I boarded my horses there, and Jen had her horses there.
Is Groveland where you met Jen?
No, I met her at the previous farm before then.
Okay, so you guys were at the previous farm before then. You were both at Groveland, and then Jen went on to board her horses at your current barn.
I never boarded my horses at the first barn that I met her at.
That was just where you met her?
Yes.
Okay. And you said you believe you two met in about 2019, is that correct?
I believe it was earlier than that, but I can't say for sure. I don't remember.
It's fair to say that horses and training and what's going on with the horses at the barn, that's the majority of what you and Jennifer talk about, is that correct?
Yes.
Jennifer does not talk to you about when she goes to the doctor herself?
No.
Jennifer doesn't tell you about James's doctor's appointments?
No.
Jennifer never gave you much detail about the names of the people she worked with or what she did at work?
No.
Did Jennifer ever give you details about James, like who he worked with, things he did?
Not a whole lot of detail. I just know that she had said that he has been through a few different jobs.
Okay. And as far as Ethan goes, your testimony was you have not seen him at the barn. Did you ever see Ethan when he would go to Groveland?
I may have seen him once or twice when they were just dropping something off, but it was always a quick visit. I don't know if I've ever actually talked to him in person or over messages or call or anything.
And it's fair to say that you talked to Jen more about horses than Ethan, is that correct?
Yes.
And with respect to Ethan coming, you wouldn't have had a problem if Ethan came that day on November 30th, is that correct?
I would not have had an issue with him coming.
It would have been unusual for Ethan to come to the barn with Jen on the 30th because he didn't normally go with her, is that correct?
Correct.
And on the 30th, when she was planning to bring Ethan, you assumed she was upset about Ethan or had some kind of concern for Ethan, is that correct?
Yes.
Jen also had the option to say to you, I'm canceling the lesson, I'm not going to come, I won't be there, correct?
Yes.
And in her messages to you, it was clear to you that she did not want Ethan to be alone, is that correct?
Yes.
Did Jennifer talk to you about some of the comments on the math paperwork, such as, like, my life is useless, or the thoughts won't stop? Did Jennifer speak to you about any of the individual comments?
No, she had just sent me the picture.
Were you concerned that Ethan may be suicidal after seeing these notes?
Yes.
Prior to the 30th, when you saw this math note, had you ever been concerned that Ethan would be suicidal?
No.
Had you ever had reason to believe he was homicidal or he would hurt other people?
No.
Had you ever been given reason to believe he was not mentally sound, that he needed professional, medical help?
No.
In terms of your friendship with Jennifer, it's fair to say when she's texting you and she says something like LOL, you understand what she means by those comments, correct?
Yes.
So, for example, when she sends a text about, you send a text about let's make Ethan a cowboy, is that correct?
Yes.
And she texts back mom rolls, something along those lines, correct?
Yes.
You know that Jennifer is kidding around and sarcastic almost, is that correct?
Here, I'm going to object. I don't know how this witness could tell what's in the mind of Jennifer Crumbley.
I will re-ask the question.
Go ahead.
Did you perceive her response as serious, that was a mom role for her to make Ethan a cowboy?
I could see her wanting to be able to have her son out at the barn and go riding. A lot of parents want to do something with their kids, and that was how I took it. But a lot of boys don't really like to ride horses, so I didn't see it as a serious thing that would actually happen.
Okay, it's fair to say that you and Jennifer are able to kid back and forth though, correct?
Yes.
You testified that you don't see as many boys. Do you see more girls coming out to the barn for riding?
Yes.
How many more, what percentage would you say, if you were talking about young people, like teenagers, are girls versus boys?
Well, we currently do not have any boys coming out to ride, really. I mean, one of the other people at my barn has a younger male student, but outside of that, there are no other boys that come out to the barn.
Approximately how many girls are out at the barn on any given day?
I would say between 2 to 4 each day.
2 to 4 each day?
Yes.
And really no boys, is that correct?
Yes.
When people come out to the barn, is it pretty typical, if they have horses there, for them to be out there about 3 to 4 times per week for 3 hours each time?
It depends on each person's situation. Some people will see once a week. Some people will see every single day.
Okay, so there's nothing unusual about 3 to 4 times a week for 3 hours at a time?
Correct.
Okay. And it's not something that you thought was unusual to not see Ethan coming with his mother out to the barn, correct?
Correct.
You certainly don't follow up with other people who have sons that aren't present out at the farm, correct?
Correct.
In the text messages with Ethan, you said they were Facebook Messenger messages?
Yes, Facebook messages with Jennifer.
Jennifer and you go on, the whole exhibit has been admitted, so the whole packet is admitted.
Yeah.
It's fair to say that beyond what the prosecution showed, after those messages, you and Jennifer communicated about you buying Billy. Is that correct?
Yes, I was planning to buy both Billy and Shorty.
And you talked about buying Billy, Shorty, the tack, other horse-related items?
Yes.
Okay, and you were talking to Jennifer about how the horses could be signed over or what you guys would need to do, is that correct?
Yes.
And in addition to the comments about the horses, it's fair to say that throughout the texts, you could tell Jennifer was upset.
Yes.
So, for example, when she said, "I'm bawling right now, Kira," how did you take that? What did you take that to mean?
She was upset and she really loves her horses.
And when Jennifer wrote, my son ruined so many lives today, what did you take that to mean?
I took that as he was the shooter at Oxford.
And you reassured her that you'll take care of the horse end for her to take something off her plate, correct?
Yes.
And you reassured her in terms of saying, try to get some rest, you'll need it, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Jennifer thanked you for not judging her unlike the rest of the world. How did you take that?
I didn't really know how to take that.
You did text Jennifer, "I know you and James," correct?
Yes.
And you texted, "This doesn't even remotely make me think it's your fault." Is that a message you sent Jen?
Yes.
It sounds like Ethan was a troubled kid.
Yes.
Is that correct? When you said, "This doesn't even remotely make me think it's your fault," what did you mean by that?
I had never gotten the feeling that Jen and James had those types of issues with their son.
So, although you knew a limited amount about Ethan, because Ethan wasn't someone you frequently talked about, you never had the idea that something like the tragedy that happened on 11/30 could happen and Ethan could be responsible for it.
Correct.
You also tried to reassure her, try to stay calm and as collected as you can. Those were some messages you sent in addition to a message that said, just be honest about everything, correct?
Yes.
You also reassured her that you had ridden Billy that day, he was going to be fine, helping alleviate stress on that end for Jen, is that correct?
Yes.
When Jennifer texted you and said, I wish we had warnings, something, he's a good kid, they made a terrible decision, what did you think after getting that text?
I was thinking there had to have been some type of signs. She had mentioned in the past, like, you know, that he really didn't have friends. He didn't go out and do fun things like kids his age.
Well, the text is from her to you saying, I wish we had warnings, something. He's a good kid, they made a terrible decision. You didn't point out to her things that you thought may have been signs in the past, correct?
Correct.
You actually wrote there probably were warnings, but nobody saw them, correct?
Yes.
And you said hindsight is always 20/20.
Yes.
And we can all agree, looking back, when something bad happens, we look back at what could have prevented it, correct?
Yes.
When Jennifer said he's a good kid, you didn't write back to her anything like, well, actually, your son is not a good kid, correct?
Correct.
And although he didn't hang out with friends, you were aware that he had one friend he was particularly close to, correct?
Yes.
And on Facebook, throughout Jen's profile, you said you were social media contact with her, is that correct?
Yes.
Could you see pictures of them going camping and taking Ethan places?
I did see posts about them doing things with him.
So there were posts about the family spending time together, camping, going places on the weekend, correct?
Yes.
And you testified that you understood he played a lot of video games, is that correct?
Yes.
And that never struck you as something that was overly problematic, correct?
No.
You had no reason to ever say to Jen, like, hey, Jen, wake up, there's signs, or anything like that.
No.
After you were aware that Ethan had been the shooter, you and Jennifer attempted to talk to each other on the phone. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And do you recall that Jennifer said you had to call her through Facebook because she has to use a track phone?
Yes.
At that point, did you and Jennifer have a telephone conversation?
We did not.
Okay, so in the Facebook Messenger thread, when it says, like, you missed a call from JC, I assume JC is Jennifer Crumbley,
Yes.
and then it says, call me back on Facebook, I'm on a track phone, I need to talk and figure some things out. You and Jennifer didn't have any phone contact at that point.
We did not.
And when Jennifer was on that track phone, she said it would be easier because texting on that phone is hard if you guys could talk, correct?
Yes.
Further down, you continue to let her know that Billy was fine, had a good ride with him, correct?
Yes.
And at that point, you became concerned about Jennifer coming out to the farm, is that correct?
Yes.
Why were you concerned with Jennifer coming to the farm?
Because I did not want them to take things that were owned by other boarders or myself.
you didn't want Jennifer to take things that were owned by other boarders or yourself?
Correct.
Did you, were you concerned about the safety of people at the farm if Jennifer and James showed up?
Yes.
Were you concerned because Jennifer showed you some of the threatening messages she had received?
Yes.
And when you explained to Jennifer you were concerned and wanted the police to be out there, you actually wrote, "I don't want people to follow you or hurt you," correct?
Yes.
And you said, "We just need to be careful."
Yes.
So nothing about any horse equipment or concerns.
No.
And were you afraid that people were going to follow the Crumbleys out to the farm and possibly hurt people?
I was worried about that.
After that discussion about the police, Mrs. Crumbley made it clear that they were headed to a safe place for a couple days. Is that correct?
Yes.
They did not tell you, she did not say the location they were going to, just a safe place.
Yes, she had said that it's a motel or hotel in Lapeer, and that was, I don't know where exactly they had gone.
And then your messages to her were, "I'm very glad you're safe. I care about you guys," correct?
Yes.
Was that true?
Yes.
And again, you reassured her, "I will take care of your boys. Let me know when you want me to buy them and I'll buy them." You were trying to figure out something to see if you could buy them, is that right?
Yes.
You also said if you need anything, just let me know, correct?
Yes.
Doing all the things that you could do as a friend to Jennifer Crumbley.
Yes, and I also wanted to make sure that the horses didn't end up in a bad situation.
And Jennifer wanted to make sure the horses didn't end up in a bad situation too, as far as you could tell.
Yes.
And as you're texting her about the horses and everything else, and the little bit about what's going on after finding out about the shooting, you didn't follow up with her about what her work arrangements were.
No.
You didn't follow up with her about what, if James was still working or what he was doing.
No.
You didn't follow up with her about any other kind of personal issues related to her. All that you followed up about is what we can see in the texts.
Yes.
So it's fair to say that your friendship with Jennifer was pretty limited to horses, care for horses, and maybe just some friendly chit chat, correct?
Yes.
Looking back, you're not looking at conversations regarding Ethan as anything where you should have contacted law enforcement, correct?
Correct.
Nothing where you should have had an alarm go off and say, "Ooh, I should call the police about this one."
Correct.
Even the day that you saw the drawing that's up on the board, you didn't contact law enforcement to say, "I just saw like a really crazy drawing" or anything along those lines.
I did not.
And if anything, Jennifer appeared to be very concerned about what was going on, correct?
Yes.
When Jennifer had ever been out to the school or not, you weren't aware of every time Jennifer had ever been over to Oxford High, is that fair to say?
Correct.
So that day stuck out as something unusual.
Yes.
You guys were attempting to put together cash that you were potentially going to pay her for horses, is that correct?
Yes.
Ultimately, the two of you never physically met up, is that correct?
Correct.
So the extent of all of your communications is contained within these 28 pages of Facebook Messenger messages.
Yes.
You already testified there were no phone calls and there was no personal, like, one-on-one contact.
Yes.
Your Honor, if I could just have one moment. I just need to- I have nothing further on behalf of Jennifer Crumbley.
Any questions on the James Crumbley?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Pack, did I pronounce that correctly, Pack?
Yes.
Thank you. You testified that you didn't speak to James very often, did you?
Yes.
That's correct, you did not speak to him?
Correct.
And when you did, it was about horses, is that fair?
Yes.
Horse-related matters, correct?
Yes.
He didn't tell you that he had to go to the doctor or anything, right?
No.
He didn't tell you that Jen had been to the doctor?
No.
He didn't talk about Ethan's medical appointments?
No.
So similar to Jen, he kept his communications with you about horses and horse-related matters, is that fair?
Yes.
And you didn't reach out to James after seeing this picture from Jen and say, I'm really concerned about Ethan, right?
I did not.
And you testified previously that your communications with Jen or James, you never were concerned about Ethan, is that fair?
Correct.
There was never anything that you saw that gave you cause to be concerned about Ethan's mental health, right?
No.
And when you did talk to James, it was limited to horses and horse-related matters.
Yes.
So it wasn't strange that he didn't talk about work, right?
Correct.
Or doctor's appointments,
Yeah.
or Ethan.
Correct.
His relationship with you was because of the horses.
Yes.
Nothing further, Judge. Thank you.
Can you redraw?
Briefly. Carol, you just testified that you didn't, I believe the testimony was you kept your conversations to friendly chit chat. Is that right?
Yes.
Except that she did talk to you about her husband having an affair.
She never said that he had an affair. She just had a feeling.
She had a feeling. And she
Yes.
did talk to you about her son being weird.
Yes.
And she did talk to you about the fact that he only had one friend.
Yes.
And she did talk to you about how he didn't like horses.
Yes.
Okay. And in all the time that you've met Jennifer and James and you've known them, how many times have you seen Ethan?
Maybe once or twice.
Okay, let me ask you this. Did both parents have to go to the barn every time for 3 to 4 times a week, 3 hours at a time?
They did not have to go together.
Fair to say, some of that stuff, all of that stuff could have been done by one person.
Yes.
Okay. And when you told Ms. Smith that Jennifer was very concerned, she still did, though, have the time to text you about Billy's mud fever
Yes.
and arrange the lesson and then cancel the lesson.
Yes.
Okay. And when you said you told her it's not your fault and you know hindsight is 2020, at that time that you stated that, did you know that that they purchased a gun for Ethan and it was accessible to him?
I did not know that the gun was for Ethan or accessible.
Objection, Your Honor, about accessible. That was...
Your Honor, I'm not offering it to prove that it was. I'm asking, did she know?
Sustaining the objection for your first question.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Did you know that Jennifer texted Ethan the day before about the ammunition search? LOL, you have to learn not to get caught.
I did not know.
Did you know that that the school told Jennifer and James they needed to get him therapy?
I did not know.
Did you know that when they heard about a shooting, that James went home to look to see if that gun was there?
I did not know that.
Did you know he called 911 and said, my son is the school shooter?
I did not know that.
And did you know that Jennifer texted, don't do it, Ethan, don't do it?
I did not know that either.
Nothing further.
Can you step down?
The prosecution calls Andrew Smith, and I believe somebody's going to go.
Should you be able to be forever, so it's not so.
Yes.
And you're outside.
She's excused, Your Honor.
Any objection? No, Judge, thank you.
None for Mr. Crumbley, Your Honor, excuse.
Hey Mark, I think you invented one that was further down that wasn't next to 7. Because the screenshot's hard to read. There was another one that was further down, because the screenshot's hard to read. What one was that?
Mr. Yola, please raise your right hand. Please, you solemnly swear the testimony you give the truth and the honesty of perjury.
Yes.
And please have a seat. And if you could scoot up as close as possible to those microphones, they do amplify your voice along with record your voice. It's very important for you to respond to all questions verbally. Please refrain from nodding your head or saying aha or aha. This is difficult for the recorder to record. Additionally, if you could keep your voice up so everybody can hear you, that would be helpful. I will leave it up to you as to whether or not you're comfortable removing your mask. If you want to remove your mask and you're comfortable doing so, you may. As you can see, we do have plexiglass around the witness stand, or you can keep it on, okay?
I'll see how it goes. Okay. All right.
Sorry?
I'll see if
It's going to be difficult to hear you.
Then you do need to keep your voice up though,
Okay.
okay? If you could please state and spell both your first and last name for the record.
Andrew Smith, ANDREW, SMITH.
Thank you. Go ahead, Counsel.
Mr. Smith, you're a lawyer, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you practiced in front of this judge and you're familiar with going to court.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. And can you tell me what your position is now, though?
I work as Chief Operations Officer for a real estate company.
Okay. And what are your duties?
Manage the operations of the company, of the portfolio of properties.
And how many employees are in the company?
Approximately 700.
All right. Do you know Jennifer Crumbley?
Yes.
Do you know James Crumbley?
No.
All right. Do you see Jennifer Crumbley in the courtroom here today?
Yes, I do.
Can you describe something she's wearing?
She's wearing the black and white, looks like prison clothing and a mask.
Can the record reflect that he's properly identified, Mrs. Crumbley? Jennifer Crumbley.
So noted.
When did Jennifer Crumbley begin working for the company?
I think she began working approximately 5 years ago.
And were you her direct supervisor?
I was most recently, but not when she was hired.
Okay, so for how long were you her supervisor? How many years?
Approximately a year and a half, I think, to 2 years.
All right, and what were her responsibilities and title?
She was a marketing director in charge of the marketing for the entire company and the portfolio of properties.
Okay, you have to keep your voice
Excuse
way
me.
up.
She was a marketing director for the company.
Okay, and as a marketing director, what does that entail? What kinds of mediums or services is she overseeing?
Responsible for marketing the property, the asset, responsible for social media, for reviews, ratings, online reviews, website, web-related materials, working with third-party vendors, working with the properties on their internal, external marketing portfolio, things of that nature.
Okay, and the company has all social media?
Yes, we have a large social media platform for that
Instagram?
properties. I believe so, yes, yes,
Facebook?
yes.
Twitter?
I don't think Twitter.
Okay. So what were Jennifer Crumbley's work hours?
Standard 40 hours a week. I think she came in at 8 o'clock or before, leave around 4 o'clock.
Was that the same every day?
I believe so for the most part, yes.
And in your company, do employees have to choose which hours they work and work the same every day, or is it flexible?
It's somewhat flexible. We want a 40-hour work week, 8-hour days, and we give some flexibility on start time.
And do you allow employees to work from home?
We have when needed, yes.
Has Jennifer Crumbley ever worked from home?
I believe so at times, yes.
Would you describe your company as family friendly?
Yes, very much.
How so?
I think we're very family friendly. If there is ever a need for time for a family issue, it's always been granted.
Okay. Taking you back to November 30th, do you remember that day?
I do.
And do you remember having any contact with Jennifer Crumbley?
I do.
Can you tell the court what was your first contact?
I received a text message from Miss Crumbley that morning at about 10 a.m.
Was it a text or Facebook Messenger?
A text message on a phone.
Is that how you normally communicated with her?
In person, by email, or by phone.
Text or Facebook Messenger is what I'm...
Oh, text message would be
Okay.
yes, text.
About approximately what time was that, if you know?
I believe 10 a.m.
And what were you doing at the time?
Striving.
Okay. Your Honor, I think at this point I'd like to approach with people's proposed 8, and I believe there's a stipulation to it. May I approach?
Yes.
And that's correct, Jenna.
Okay, Mr. Smith, what are you looking at? What did I just hand you?
You handed me what appears to be a text thread from Ms. Crumbley.
And who?
Mrs. Crumbley. And me, myself, correct.
Okay, so can you tell the court again exactly what time did you first hear from her?
10:05 a.m.
And you were where at the time?
I was driving my vehicle.
Okay, did you get a good look at the text?
I saw that she texted me while driving that she was going to her child's school to meet with a counselor.
Okay, was that something that she's required to do if she leaves work?
You're supposed to let your supervisor know if you're going to be leaving work, yes.
Okay, and did you respond?
No.
All right, may I publish the exhibit? Okay, so the worksheet, which has also previously been exhibited, entered into evidence, she also attached the math worksheet, correct?
Correct, yes.
All right, and what exactly, can you read the text that she sent?
I have to go to my kid's school. Counselor just called, and this is what I'm dealing with. I'll be back by 11:30, 12 at the latest.
Okay, and then what was the next communication you had with Jennifer Crumbley?
I believe I saw her at work around noon that day.
Did you take a good look at that worksheet?
I did, but not at that time.
Okay, so you said you saw her later at work. Do you know what time that was?
It was approximately 12 p.m.
Okay, and where did you see her?
I saw her in the copy room in her office.
And just to stop you, did you know anything about her son?
No, nothing more than maybe small talk.
Okay, did she ever talk about her son with you?
Not really, no. Maybe some small talk here and there, but not much at all, no.
Did she talk about anything that she did outside of work?
Very little. She talked about her horses, and she owned horses, and she really enjoyed horses. Maybe a vacation here or there, a little travel, but not a lot, no.
Okay. So the next time you saw Jennifer, I'm sorry, you said it was around what time?
About 12 p.m. on that day.
Okay, and did you have a conversation with her?
Yes.
And what was the conversation about?
I recall asking her how things were, how she was doing, and she had said that her son needed to get some counseling. And I think she mentioned his dog, a family pet had passed away, and a grandparent had passed away recently, and she felt like she was failing or failed him.
I'm sorry, she said what?
I think she said she felt as if she was failing him or a failure.
All right. When she said she had to get counseling, did she say why?
No. Oh, she didn't say why. She just mentioned that a family pet had passed away, a grandparent had passed away, but she didn't say why.
Did she tell you what the situation was at school?
No, just that she was told she needed to get some counseling for her son.
Okay, and her son was not with her, correct?
No, now when I was talking to her, no.
Okay. By the way, you do allow kids to come to your workplace, right?
It's happened, yeah, quite a
Okay.
bit actually.
Can you tell the court what was on Jennifer Crumbley's schedule that day?
I know we had a meeting scheduled to visit the property that afternoon.
And did you talk to her about going to the meeting?
Yes.
When did you speak with her?
We may have talked before the 30th, but we talked that day, that afternoon.
Where did you have that conversation?
An hour later, her and another colleague and I had a brief conversation about the property visit that afternoon and about some phone calls we had scheduled the next day.
And was she required to go to that meeting?
She was invited, not required.
Did you tell her she had to go?
No.
Did you tell her she didn't have to go?
At that meeting, I mentioned to her, it was her choice, she did not need to come. I did say that, yes.
Okay. And if she had not returned to work that afternoon,